everybody for coming. I was concerned about the pressure of cutting into the band's time. I own a nightclub long enough to know you got to keep the music going. And you people haven't been fed yet, so I didn't expect this much pressure. Barb and I were married on November 29th, 1986, and Lexy came along 10 months later to join Dan, who was 6 at that time. Like many of the rest of you, Barb and I did not have the time to figure out if we were right for each other. We were struggling with these damn kids all the time. Lexy was very quiet back then. She worshiped her big brother, Dan. She played well with her cousins, Jessica and Nick. Very quiet, but she had aspirations. She wanted to be a server. Anytime I was sitting in the living room, she would come up, head bowed down, hands clasped together. Can I help you? She was in earnest about that. So we thought we had this little, mild little girl, and we soon learned we did not. It was a while ago. Gee, I think Lexy was about 3 years, 8 days old. The date was September 21st, 1987. Summy had just been born the day before. We were adjusting to the surprise that our boys were red-headed bookends. And we were sitting in the kitchen at our little house, just trying to collect our thoughts. Our little waitress was not present. That should have registered with us, but we were tired. So we're sitting there in the kitchen, and we hear a little commotion in the house. And suddenly, 3-year-old Lexy appears in the doorway with her newborn brother, held like a doll by the neck. And she was wobbling under the weight. She was so proud of herself. It stopped my heart. It's the scariest thing I ever thought of. How am I ever going to explain to my daughter that she was trying to help out, but it's unfortunate that her brother's a quadriplegic? Well, of course, both of us had been telling Lexy right along, oh, you're going to be able to, this is a warning to some of you younger mothers out there. We'd been telling Lexy, you can help out with the baby. Oh, you are going to be such a help with the baby. And when Barb had put Summy in the crib, she hadn't pulled up the side of the crib. Now, you've heard of protective services, things like that for children. Normally, they don't have to intervene until after a half hour of being home with the baby. But of course, we weren't doing so well. But Lexy wanted to help out and did help out, but that is the most frightening thing I ever saw in my life, because she had this triumphant look on her face and had him in his head hold. And fortunately, Sumner turned out to be more durable than I expected, and our parenting skills improved. So our mild little girl, we found out had quite a will. We had seen her before this. She was just always quiet. She had one of those Little Tykes cozy cars. She would sit in it and watch television like she was at the drive-in movie. She had the Little Tykes pastel playhouse out on the patio in the back and would spend hours puttering around there. And it's back there when I deluded myself that I actually thought I could afford to raise children because these hunks of plastic weren't very expensive. It got worse after that. But Lexy was a very interesting little child, and she showed a lot of willpower, still shows a lot of willpower. She and Tony planned this whole wedding and did a great job on it, I think. So we will fast forward, because I don't want to cut down on the band time, to high school when Lexy was one of the commencement speakers at Villa. She gave a light address, which was well received. It was nice to see that your daughter was in the in crowd at Villa. She knew what was going on. She then went to the University of Michigan. She wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do. I suggested the business program. That didn't work out too well, but she did graduate in 4 years, as did Danny and Summy, which was a nice thing. When Lexy completed college, she moved to Chicago, where Dan and Ellen live, and worked as a billing clerk for a health insurance company. After her work day, she would get on the L and go all the way across town to take credits in speech pathology, something she had not taken as an undergraduate. She was a psychology major. She accumulated enough credits and then applied to speech pathology school and was accepted at the University of Pittsburgh, because they didn't know she was from Erie. They thought she was from Chicago, is my theory. And successfully completed that program, and of course was eager to return to Chicago. But her mother was ill at that time. She came home. She helped us out at home, and I really appreciate that. I'll never forget that. She came home. She came home and was very helpful, and as we went through this tremendous family crisis, somebody said we did a good job raising Lexy. I will take 5% credit for that. I'll put it with her mother, like the rest of you. The mothers are what counts. Tony came on this scene at a very dark time in our family. Barb was slipping fast. It was Thanksgiving, and she only lived another 2 months. Tony came home. They had met at the bars, and we were there in this family crisis, and I'm thinking, well, I like this guy, but the poor guy, you know, you're getting introduced into this crisis we're in. I don't expect to see him again, and I don't blame him, because this is no fun to go through. Well, he did come back, and then when Barb passed, I had the horrible news a month later, the unfathomable news that Lexy had been diagnosed with the same illness. The only good thing I can say about that is my fear of death has greatly declined in recent years. When it gets to be a 1090 proposition, you're not too worried about it. But Tony stuck around. They were engaged a few months later, and Tony showed us the way to come back from what had been a very dark period in our lives. And along the way, so I know Tony will slowly, hopefully slowly, descend to the category that all of us husbands end up in, the deeply disappointing. But I will tell Tony, that will not happen in my book. You came in when the going was toughest. And if you come up short later, like the rest of us, I'm not going to hold it against you. But I want to thank everybody for coming, and I wish you all the happiness, and I hope it goes smoother. It's got to go smoother. Go on ahead.